That's correct. As long as you don't take any formal action, we'll be fine.
And we'll just simply, the committee will just simply refer them to the board. We didn't have enough to vote. Is everybody okay with going ahead like that?
But if eventually we get a quorum, we can blindfold them and say, vote yes.
Yeah, we could always come back and revisit the committee once we have a quorum if we wanted to.
Okay. All right, so, all right, well, then I'm going to call to order the July 27th meeting of the Operations and Safety Committee. First item on the agenda is approval of the minutes of the June 22nd meeting. We can't even adopt the minutes, can we? We can acknowledge receipt of the minutes and refer them to the group. So, and then we're going to move to item 4, which is a briefing on station management FY23 accomplishments. Adele Perez. I'm not sure what's going on with my voice this morning. I may have been yelling at my wife or something this morning. I'm not sure, but I didn't know it if I was. But
Good morning, Mayor Floyd, Mr. Greenwood, Mr. Wright, and members of the Operations Safety Committee. May I direct your attention to agenda item number 4. This is a briefing on station management's FY23 accomplishments. Next slide, please. This program has truly been a game changer for the authority by increasing the look and feel of our stations. We've received full acceptance of station management's 3-tier concepts, which are eyes on, where we identify issues, hands on, where we take action, game on, where we showcase our accomplishments. With the implementation of our targeted cleaning contract, we have a minimum of 6 stations receiving targeted cleaning on a daily basis. For example, today we have Emmon Park, Georgia State, King Memorial, West End, 5 Points, Lindbergh, and Midtown all receiving services from our targeted cleaning contract. We have also introduced new technology to station management. We're conducting a Zonar pilot at 2 locations, which we'll talk further in detail later on in the presentation. We have station lighting enhancements, which started in FY23, which will continue on into FY24 with a schedule of intent, which we will also talk more in detail later on in the presentation. We have open lines of communication between all departments, which allows us to address issues in our stations more effectively and efficiently. We have increased engagement with our CIDs and MPUs. And we also have a set of governance that we have established. We have rule books and manuals that have been created for all levels of service personnel that are in this program, which will allow us to have continuity as this program continues to progress in the future. If you look at the images on the slide, this is actually a biweekly tour, which is part of our Eyes On initiative at Buckhead that we did conduct. Typically on these tours, we have people from all departments. We have MOW, EP&E, we have building and grounds, facilities, just kind of walking through the station to see what our customers are seeing and what are some of the things that we can improve on. Over to the right, you see a picture of Mr. Jim Durrett, who is actually a member of the CID for Buckhead, who came on the tour with us. We like to encourage these units to come with us for the stations that run through their areas, because we like to see what they see, what their concerns are, and we want them to kind of see what we're doing to make the stations more customer friendly, and they get a better idea of how this program works and some of the initiatives that we are conducting moving forward. Next slide, please. As I mentioned earlier, we have a targeted cleaning contract, and these contractors come into our stations and perform heavy duty cleaning every 30 days. So our stations are receiving deep cleaning every 30 days. And if you look, this is actually HE Homes. You can see where they're pressure washing the kitchen ride. And you can also see over to the right where they have the concourse blocked off and they're pressure washing the concourse. Next slide, please. Here are some images from King Memorial. They're pressure washing the stairwells. Over to the left and over to the right, you can see where they're pressure washing the tile in the bus loop, wiping down the glass. And I would just like to reiterate that our stations are receiving, every station is receiving this type of detailed cleaning every 30 days. And that's due to the availability of this contract, and this is something that this contract has allowed us to be able to do. It also allows us to maintain our stations better and allows our internal personnel to maintain the stations and make them more sanitary for the customers that come in. Next slide, please. As mentioned earlier, we currently have a Zonar pilot that is going on at 2 of our locations, Lakewood and East Point. Zonar is a paperless electronic safety inspection device that allows you to keep track of assets and allows you to track asset conditions. The way we're going to be using it in station management is a little bit different than we're using it well, similar but different than we're using it in our bus garages. We are currently using this system in our bus garages to keep track of inspections and repairs and maintenance requests for our buses. If you look over to the right, the bottom right of the picture, you see these orange and black pucks. These pucks will be stationed in like emergency exits, stairwells, restrooms, and other areas in the station that are supposed to be checked and cleaned daily. Service personnel will be equipped with a tablet and be able to scan these pucks, basically saying that they checked and cleaned the area. They will also be able to upload pictures and put in notes and even put in maintenance requests. If you look over to the top of the screen, this is kind of an example of what the dashboard is going to look like. With this dashboard, our zone superintendents and our supervisors or anybody is actually able to go in to kind of see how many requests were put in per station and what was put in within the stations. And actually, if you just wanted to see how many restrooms had issues today or if we had any issues in a particular area in the station, you'll be able to query that information as well. We believe this is going to be a game changer for station management. It's going to increase visibility and functionality of this program. At this time, I would like to introduce you to Mr. Jorge Bernard, the Director of North-South, to expand on the FY23 accomplishments.
Thank you, Idell, and good morning. Next slide, please. To continue on what we've accomplished over the last fiscal year, to the right here you see basically a poster that we have placed in every one of our stations. This one is particularly for Zone 3. We do have, like Adele mentioned earlier, all the zones are broken down by station, so they have up to 6 stations per one zone. And this has the information on who's responsible for each particular station within that zone. In this particular case, like I mentioned, it's Zone 3. A couple of the things that the customer had been accustomed to communicating with MARTA is they've been able to contact customer service to give us their feedback, and they've also been able to submit their comments and complaints and compliments via the self-serve heat system. 2 items that we improved over the last year is now they have the ability to contact the zone superintendent directly via email or via phone and leave a message for them. So these are an improvement that we have made over the last year to be able to have the customers communicate with us. This email and phone numbers are emails and the phone calls that they'll make is checked daily by our zone superintendents. So it basically double the ways that we can communicate with the customers, and they do use them. In addition, we also have the Maintenance Control Center. That is an area where our staff can call in to make service requests, and that information is documented from the maintenance desk, and that desk is actually located downstairs on the 3rd level. They can also coordinate the work orders with the various departments once they submit the work orders or the service requests for the different departments to complete that work. So they'll communicate and coordinate that information with, for example, EP&E, building and support, or any other department that may have to come out and do some work on our stations. And they support this desk to go our hours of operations. Next slide, please. In this slide here, you'll see on the bottom picture some of the lighting issues that we've had. They were kind of dim and kind of dingy in some of the stations, so we partnered up with EP&E, and they're going through a process where they are upgrading our lighting system in our stations. As you can see on the top picture here, it's the same area where the lighting is much better. This is actually creating a very good environment for our customers, where it's brighter, it's safer for them, so that they don't feel nervous or anything like that. This particular station here was Civic Center. As you can see to the left of the slide here, some of the stations that were already completed and the stations that are currently in progress right now, and at what degree of progress they're making at this particular point. Next slide, please. As you can see in this slide, we have some folks that are cleaning our trackways. This is a very difficult task that we have. It's very cumbersome because of the nature of our business. We basically have a very limited time span that we can complete this work. We typically do this type of work at the end of revenue service, which only limits us to a couple of hours per night, and we have to do the entire system. So we basically try to schedule this on a nightly basis to make sure that we continuously clean the system and continue to make progress throughout our system. As you notice in this picture here, they're actually getting quite close to the third rail. As you can see in the photograph there in the center, they're actually reaching for trash underneath the third rail. And the reason why we do this after revenue service is, number one, so we can stop the trains and not have any traffic in that area while they're conducting this work. We also have to de-energize the third rail to keep our crews safe. We have procedures in place that we do as soon as we start getting this type of work implemented, where we have different major safety features and that we have in place to make sure that we stop the trains by putting flagging, and that prevents the trains from coming into the area. We also have trip stops. It's one of the other tools that we use to make sure that there is no encroachment with any vehicle, whether they're revenue trains or any type of work vehicles that we're using for doing any other track maintenance during the night. And again, this is very difficult because it's time consuming and we're very limited to the time that we can do this work, but we try to take every measure that we can to keep our crew safe while we do this type of work. And that way we can provide a better, clean environment for our customers as well. Next slide, please. Also in this picture, this is actually the same escalator. If you look at the photographs to the left, the escalators kind of get very dirty just during normal wear and routine traffic through our stations. The one on the right is actually the same escalator. This is after we clean this particular escalator. It is with the tool. It basically looks like like an oversized Swiffer, if you will, that we place on the escalator. It goes either on the top or on the bottom, depending on the direction of the escalator. We have some cleaning solution that goes with it, and we basically hold that item in place while the escalator is actually in motion to make sure that we clean every step. This particular process here takes about 45 minutes on this particular escalator, and you can see the difference on how shiny it is once we're done completing this type of work. Vertical Transportation has also partnered up, and they have a contract with Schindler where they're actually doing some of the work as well. So we have 3 different methods that we can get these escalators cleaned. As you're aware, we have a lot of escalators throughout our system, so it's important that we try to do whatever we can to keep them clean and keep them safe and in good operating condition for our customers as well. Next slide, please. Moving forward to fiscal year 24, we're hoping to continue the progress that we have made, and we're going to continue to push forward to make our stations better, cleaner, and more in an environment that the customers would appreciate from us. So one of the things that we're looking at is having full installation of the sonar system throughout our entire system, meaning all the stations would have this capability for our station maintainers to be able to keep track of the work that they've done, and that we can help inspect the stations as well. We're looking to increase the trackway cleaning as we add more staff into with the heavy cleaning crew, and other avenues that we're looking at taking place here in the near future so we can continue cleaning the trackway and maximize the time that we have available to us. Continue the lighting enhancement project to make sure that all our stations are up to standard with the lighting. And we're also looking to increase the cleanup in the stations and the surrounding areas in our station and include our communities to assist with that progress, as it is our stations and their community coming together. Next slide, please. Thank you for your time, and I'll turn it over to Mayor Floyd.
Thank you very much. Any questions about this? Jim?
Jorge, when I saw you and George and Daniel and Lyle last night at the Vine City Station, my wife and I went down to the platform, and my wife looked down and she said to me, "My goodness, look at how squeaky clean everything is here." I didn't see Vine City in anything that you presented right there. What have you done to Vine City? Because it looks like a brand-new station when you're standing on the platform.
So we spend a lot of time. We have the targeted cleaners, as Adele mentioned earlier, that come out and they help clean the stations as well. We have our heavy cleaners that come out and clean the trackways as well. We put in a lot of resources throughout our authority that not only Vine City looks that way, but we want to make sure that our stations like Garnett, Civic Centers are also at the same standards as well.
So that was just cleaning and
Yes.
not renovation of
Not
busted up
renovation at
bricks
this
or tiles or anything?
Correct.
Look great.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Stacy?
just really quickly, so with the targeted daily cleaning, how is that, what, you said that that's only 6 stations. How is that determined on, like, is that based on the volume of customers in a particular station, or what is that based on?
No, so what we've done is we split up our stations into 6 zones, and each zone has a targeted cleaning contract. So in every zone, with the exception of 5 Points, has approximately 6 to 7 stations within those zones. So those contractors are only responsible for those stations within that zone. So 5 Points has its own contractor, and then you have the stations from Garnett to Airport. They have a separate contractor, which allows us basically, they can spend 2 to 3 days at each station. So that's why I say we have a minimum of 6 being cleaned daily, because every day we have a targeted cleaner within those zones, basically hitting those stations.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Rod?
Yeah, I want to say thank you. I mean, it's just an excellent way to let the customers see what happens underneath the dust and the dirt that happens, because all these stations are exposed to external, things and weather and dirt and all of that, and it's so great. And I want to say thank you, first of all, because I appreciate it, because I take the effort to get off at these stations and just walk around as I travel on them, and I can see a noticeable improvement. And then I want to say thank you to the station leaders also. I've had a chance to meet a few of them. They've done a great job in making sure that their stations are looking good, and they are champion for that. So I just want to say a wonderful comment concerning the whole process. All right?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Frida?
I just want to echo the same thing. I've been riding the train quite a bit lately, and 5 Points, I mean, it's amazing what you've done at 5 Points. It looks so much better. And then just some of the other stations, I look forward to the day we can do something at Airport, but I do understand we're up against a challenge right there. But other than that, I think it's absolutely amazing, and I noticed how clean the stations were and how the tracks were clean, and thank you so much for what you're doing. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions?
Yeah, just go get that stuffed animal off the tracks on southbound at Lindbergh.
Thank
All right, again, thank you for your presentation. And I will say that safety, a clean station is a safe station. And it has a lot to do with perception, because in local government, it doesn't matter whether you're a safe community. It matters is whether people think you're a safe community or not. And perception is all of it. And when you see a clean station, you think, I'm all right, especially a well-lighted, clean station. You think, okay, I'm okay to be here, it's okay. And I don't mind my kids being out here, 17-year-old granddaughter riding the train at night, which scares the crap out of me, but she thinks it's great. But anyway, thank you. I think this is one of the most important efforts that MARTA is making these days, is this effort to get to get things cleaned up and look like they should look. And maybe we could save some money on the renovations if we don't need to do the renovations at 5 Points. Just clean it good, and then maybe people think we spent a lot of money there. So anyway, all right, no other questions. We do have a quorum now, so thank you very much. And I'm going to move back and ask for a approval or acceptance of the minutes. So is there a motion for acceptance of the minutes of the June 22nd Operations and Safety Committee meeting? Are we voting on, are we doing this up here, right? Okay. Moved by Frida and seconded by Jim Durrett. And the the minutes are accepted. Okay, we'll move now to item 2, which is a resolution authorizing the award of a contract for the procurement of bus and rail detergent degreaser, more cleaning this morning, IFB B50251. Charles Chafin, Director of Bus Maintenance. Charles?
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Floyd, Mr. Greenwood, Mr. Wright, and members of the Operations Safety Committee. My name is Charles Chafin. I'm the Director of Bus Maintenance. I would like to bring your attention to agenda item number 2, which is the resolution authorizing the award of a contract for the procurement of bus and rail detergent and degreaser, IFB B50251. Next slide, please. What's important about our bus washing degreaser? It prevents corrosion, reduces environmental footprint by cleaning the road grime and items off the bottom of the cars and the buses, enhances public appearance, and it's biodegradable. Next slide, please. As previously stated, this actually is used on buses and the rail cars, so it is a joint venture. Next slide. And this has been accepted by our environmental community. MARTA requires soap that does not contain any phosphates, suffocants, or any antibacterial ingredients, which makes it safe for our stormwater systems and our collection systems. Next slide, please. This is a list of the cleaning cycles for rail and bus. So we have weekly cleaning of rail cars. We got 1 pair per day of the under cleaning of the rail cars. You have under bus cleaning during your major engine repairs and PMIs. We have daily bus wash cleanings, and then we have major bus cleanings done on a 6,000 mile increment, which averages about a 45-day cycle. Next slide, please. This contract term is 2-year base with a 1-year option. We received 4 total bids, with Spinergy LLC being the lowest and responsible bidder. And then it's a little bit of background on Spinergy. Spinergy is a leader in the industrial lubricant supplies. They're a certified DBE vendor since 2014, and they're local here in Atlanta. And we've actually partnered with them on several other options, such as antifreeze and antimicrobial, it's hard word for me to say, diesel tank tonic. So to clean our diesel tanks. The price has been determined to be fair and reasonable based on the independent cost estimate, and the DBE goal is 20%, like I said, because of Spinergy being a DBE provider. Next slide, please. The Office of Bus Maintenance respectfully requests authorization for the resolution to enter into a contract with Spinergy LLC for the amount of $722,950. Next slide, please. And I'll now turn it back over to you, Mayor Floyd, for consideration.
Is there a motion concerning this resolution? Moved by Frida Arnage. Is there a second? Seconded by Jim Durrett. So any discussion now, questions concerning this item?
Yes, so
Yes.
20% goal, but 100% because they're a DBE firm.
Correct.
Thank you.
Other than, Ms. Nash, other than the actual product itself, right? Everything else will, right. Correct.
Yes.
My question is, you mentioned Spinergy because they were lowest, local, I love all that. Had we worked with them before in this capacity, or we used another vendor for this work before?
For the actual degreaser, we've used other vendors for that, but Spinergy has worked with us on, like I said, right now we're doing antifreeze with them, and we're doing our take tonic with them. I've dealt with Spinergy for a long time. They're a very reputable DB provider in the area.
Thank you.
Ms. Scott?
So my question is in regards to antibacterial and the antimicrobial. Is this product used only outside of the bus?
Correct.
Okay, all right, thank you.
No problem.
Okay, any other questions? I'll call for the vote then, please. Okay, and the resolution is adopted. Item 3 is a resolution authorizing the award of a contract for the procurement of MARTA buses, RFP P50104. Mr. Chafin, we got them clean. We maybe not need these new buses anymore, huh?
I think that's wishful thinking, sir. So this is agenda item number 3. I'm very excited about this agenda item. It's a resolution authorizing the award of a contract for procurement of MARTA buses, RFP P50104. Next slide, please. The overview on this contract, this will support MARTA's fixed route and rapid bus needs for the next 5 years. We had 5 manufacturers submit proposals for the different propulsion types and lengths. We had the technical evaluation committee complete a review of all the proposals and documents sent, with the selection committee reviewing that information along with other information to make a final decision. There will be annual task orders presented to MARTA, to the board, based on which propulsion type and what links we need for various task years. Next slide. So I'm going to go over the proponent selection process in the next 2 slides to just give some insight on what we did to come to our final decision. Next slide, please. So for the technical evaluation committee, there was 14,000 pages of documents that was submitted for review that they had to comb through and make sure that it met our specification compliance. We looked at contractor references, price proposals, and financial stabilities and capabilities of the different manufacturers. And this was presented to the selection committee for further consideration and voting. Next slide, please. So the SEC, they evaluated and looked at the technical proposals, looked at different references from peer authorities, looked at financial information, submitted a BAFO, and looked to see what was best for the authority. At the end of the day, when the votes were cast, New Flyover America has been selected to represent us in the next 5 years on our bus purchases. Next slide, please. So the next slide is going to talk about our schedule of replacements and additions. Next slide. So this will show you what our goal is over the next 5 years. Of course, this can change with expansion and different options, which I will speak to later on. So 2024, that's going to be our first purchase, and that is the Rapid Summerhill Transit, which has already been brought forward to the board in March. So those are 6 60-foot BEB, battery electric buses. And then starting in 2025, you will see a mixture of CNG for replacement purposes along with battery electric buses to work towards our green initiative. What you will not see, which is unique, is you will not see any diesel buses on this proposal. Next slide, please. So the bus configurations within this RFP. Next slide, please. So as stated, there are no diesel buses on this proposal. That is so we can work towards our 2030, 25% green initiative. So we have CNG of varying lengths. We have battery electric buses of varying lengths. But what you will see with the asterisk is something new, and that is the fuel cell powered buses that we're keeping as options within our system. This is your hydrogen fuel cell buses that we're watching closely. We're looking at different technologies, and we're looking at a possible pilot program in the future. Next slide, please. These are some of the additional options that we're looking at for the buses or have been included in the RFP. So the driver's protective shield and door, that will actually come on these buses. We will not be making them in-house. We will have them installed by the manufacturer, test fitted by the manufacturer, and they'll come already pre-done. The HVAC system has been robust and upgraded with purification and inlets, and that's based on what we've seen in the past with the pandemic. Some of the new items on the fixed route will be the traffic signal prioritization that will already be pre-wired, ready to go, and the lane enforcement pre-wire system install that we're looking into for bus lane enforcement. Now on the rapid buses, I know everybody's excited to make sure that we have some innovation and some nice designs on this. So there are some extra additionals on there. So you've got additional street side doors. You got interior bike racks. Will give you a more sleek look on the outside and allow for the bikes to actually be secure on the inside. We're going to go with multi-color head signs and side signs. So we'll be able to change colors based on if we want to do it for a route or any kind of special services. Will be able to change those signs, and we'll be able to do the same thing with the interior lighting. So the interior lighting is going to be more of an RGB type, where we can change the colors of the interior lighting. One of the great things about the Rapid is we will be doing USB charging for all of our customers, so they can stay connected and stay charged while they're on our system and riding. And then we're going to, of course, move with the traffic enforcement, or traffic signal and lane enforcement on the Rapid buses. Next slide, please. So with this RFP, there was a lot of thought that went into it, and there's a lot of value added. Next slide, please. So as you see on the left side, we were very conscious about our warranties, especially moving forward with battery electric buses, and not quite understanding the 12-year proposal of battery electric buses, because there really hasn't been any running for 12 years. So as you see, propulsion system, we ensured that we had a longer warranty period to make sure to protect the authority on that end. But we did that with a lot of other features too. So with your CNG, you have 5 years, 300,000 miles, and you have extended warranties for pretty much every proponent of the system. And the extended warranties, what's great about that is our technicians can work next to the warranty providers to get more training, more in-house OJT. All right, now workforce development. If we don't put time and effort into our technicians, then we're not going to be able to grow for the future. So that was really thought about in this RFP. So every task order we come back to ask for additional buses, we'll have 500 hours of training hours pulled into almost like a credit system. All right. Another great thing about New Flyer, if you did not know, Anniston, Alabama is their innovation center. Okay, so that's where they do a lot of their innovation, battery electric, training, and so forth. Well, New Flyer's rolled out in a very comprehensive apprenticeship program for electric buses. It's very robust. I've actually looked at other peer authorities. It's really top notch. And they're testing this on their current employees right now with the future of rolling it out for us to be able to do it as well. And with Anniston being a close drive, it's something we're definitely going to want to take advantage of. Training aids, this is more for our training department internally. We'll be able to get different items like propulsion units and door units and so forth, so we can do hands-on training in our training rooms and refresher training for technicians. So the workforce development's a huge deal and something that we're going to really be pushing the effort on. Next slide, please. So procurement and funding, we'll talk about grant and the grants of what we're going to get reimbursed on for the different types of vehicles. Next slide, please. So we have a potential of 80%, up to 80% reimbursement from the FTA. You can see the breakdown. The reason why Summerhill Rapid is less just because you have the Tiger grants and other grants that are helping fund this. But for the most part, it is 80% reimbursable. And then the low note grant, that one's already approved with 25 buses and 25 electric buses and 25 chargers. Next slide, please. This is a 5-year term, no options. As stated, FTA funds will be utilized as much as possible, up to 80%. And then the DBE was done through the TVM federal program, which is a FTA dedicated DBE program that is done annually, and they have to report directly to the FTA. The Office of Bus Maintenance respectfully requests authorization for a resolution to enter into a contract with New Flyer for the estimated amount of $225,629,865 to support the MARTA fixed route and rapid bus fleets. Next slide, please. I now turn it back over to you, Mayor Floyd, for consideration.
Thank you, Charles. You might take just a minute and talk about traffic pre-wiring, traffic signalization, pre-wiring, what that means, and also lane enforcement, what that involves.
Okay, so the idea of this RFP is to ensure that when buses arrive to us, they're pretty much going to try and run wires down channels and so forth afterwards. So we're going to have either the complete unit installed, or we will have the wiring all installed to the end faucets, where we just put the cameras on at the end.
So and the traffic signal is something on the bus that makes the signal change. Is that
Correct.
Correct, okay. And
That's where it gives us prioritization.
okay, and talk about lane enforcement, I mean, what that means.
Lane enforcement is going to be more to deal with the rapid sections for dedicated bus lanes. So what this is going to allow for is for us, for the bus, to take a picture of the license plate, look at enforcement violations where people are in our bus lane, and that information will be sent out for ticketing and removal process.
Okay, all right, thank you, that's what I was trying to get to. All right. Breda?
Back in slide 10, you talk a lot about the different features that are available on the rapid and the fixed route buses.
Yes, ma'am.
But since it says options and features, I guess I just want to hear that we're doing all of that.
Well, we
Not
actually,
just part of it, but all of it. Because I think it's important as we're buying these new buses, that one of the features to get people to ride them is that they are very user-friendly and very, so, that's what I just want to hear, that we are doing that. They're not just options.
I think the better way to actually say it, these are the optional features that we've already guaranteed, that we've committed to.
You can change that on.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, any other?
Yeah, and
Yes,
I
sorry,
guess
Valencia.
as still part of that, I was wondering if you'll have Wi-Fi on each of the buses. Talked about the USB port, but I haven't seen anything related to Wi-Fi.
I believe we are correct, because we're going over to more of a cellular connection within the buses, getting away from the analog.
Okay, clarification, we are being asked to approve FY '24 bus purchase today? We're approving the contract as a
You've
whole.
already, right, you're approving just the contract as a whole. You actually already approved the FY '24 purchase when we came for the Summer Hill 60-foot buses. So that's already been done. Right now, we're just approving the contract as a whole for the next 5 years.
Okay, and you've made some projections about what that's going to look like over the next 5 years, the number of buses and types of buses, but that could change, is that correct?
That could change with the way we're looking at our system for the better MARTA to see what we need in the future. So that can change, but we do have, that's why we left additional buses in there. So we do have options for expansion or whatever our needs are for the next 5 years.
Okay, and then does the timing of the purchase of these buses affect the federal reimbursement number?
No, sir.
So we're guaranteed 80%?
Up to 80%.
Up to 80%?
Yes, sir.
But we don't know exactly how much we're going to get, is that correct?
Not until we actually put in. We do have some of these grants already in place. So you have the low-no grants already in place, so we know that's 80%. We have our rapid transit for Summer Hill is already in place. So we already know those exact numbers, but we'll know closer as we do the task orders. And then that will be presented to you every single year. You know, so when we come up and I say, sir, I need to buy 45 buses for FY '25, I will give you the exact grant reimbursement at that time.
Okay, any other questions?
I just have a comment.
Oh, sorry. Ms. Scott. Oh, do we have to do that? Okay, is there a motion concerning this resolution? Motion by Frida, the second by Jim. Okay, thank you. Now we can go into discussion. Ms. Scott?
Discussion, right? I was looking to see if Ms. Nash was in the room. No? She is? I just wanted to say thank you to her, and you're probably wondering, what does this have to do with New Flyer? But in May, New Flyer was represented here by the federal government as to some of the best jobs in America and why. I participated on behalf of MARTA, and Ms. Nash, you provided me with some great information, which I was able to share with New Flyer, and they shared with me. So they were represented as one of the best places to work in America, and the federal government was actually supporting that program. So I wanted to say thank you and say that New Flyer was represented as one of the best places to work. So I expect that we won't have any issues in receiving our buses.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
the fact that they're right across the river in Alabama, so thank you.
Yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you, Ms. Nash.
Ms. Nash, you employee of New Flyer, is that? No, you're not, okay. All right. Okay, Stacy?
Quick question, going back to the grants and the 80%. How do we maximize that 80%? Like, what do we need to do? And I don't know if you know that off the top of your head. But we position ourselves for the maximum.
I'm not down to the minute details, but what it is there's different kind of grant programs, of course, and we look at the different ones that are best suit us. So like on the NOLO, we partnered together with everybody and the stakeholders. We came together, we decided on how many buses were advantageous for MARTA, how many chargers we need to do that system. And then we approached and asked for the grant money to do that. And I believe it's similar on the other grants. We propose, we say, we're going to replace this many schedules, this is the amount of money we need, and then we get the FTA support on that to do that.
Yeah, Rich, right. It's an iterative application process. Each year, we have a segment of one of our departments specifically focused on that. What grants are coming up? What are the criteria? And how do we're always in competition with other agencies that are seeking grant money. So it could change from year to year with, federal priorities. But MARTA typically does very, very well in terms of our application because the segment that we're serving, the fact that it's in keeping with the federal priorities of green technology, especially if sometimes we indicate where these buses are going to be serving, if it's in an opportunity zone, things like that. So we have bus and bus facilities grants. We have the green grants, as Britt has talked about. So we can never guarantee in advance how much we're going to get, but we're very competitive in those spaces.
Thank you.
Jim?
Thanks, Bill. Collie, on page 7, it says acquisition of the electric buses is going to be dependent upon our ability to install the charging infrastructure. I'd love to have a briefing sometime soon on our strategy and plan for that.
All right, we'll schedule that, Jim. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions concerning this matter?
Mayor Floyd, if I may.
Oh, I'm sorry, Peter.
It was just brought to my attention that the number in the resolution before you is wrong. The total amount changed. I just want to make sure that you guys are voting on the correct number. The correct number is what Mr. Chafin mentioned in his presentation, which is 225, 629, 865. So if somebody wouldn't mind just to, is that's in your resolution, though? If you look at the resolution, it's 222. There was a,
Okay.
so if somebody could amend, or make a motion to amend that number so we get the right one on the floor, I'd appreciate it.
Okay, the Chair will entertain a motion to amend the resolution to the corrected number.
Yes.
I
Hear a
second.
motion, to hear a second. Any opposition? All in favor, please raise your either hand. Any opposed? Okay, the resolution is amended to include the corrected number. So now we have in front of you the motion. Any other discussion? Approval of the amended resolution. All in favor? Oh, we're voting on the computer. Okay. And the bus motion approved, purchase is approved.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone.
And next item is we have key performance indicators, which are informational only. And unless you want to hear the briefing again, we're adjourned. This meeting is adjourned.
today, Thursday, July 27th, 2023. And item 1 on the agenda is approval of our June 22nd, 2023 Business Management Committee meeting minutes. I'll entertain a motion and a second for approval of those minutes. All right, we apparently have a motion and a second. Any discussion, any corrections? Then let's go ahead and vote. The resolution passes. Minutes are approved. Item number 2 on the agenda is a resolution authorizing the modification and contractual authorization for financial capacity and scenario planning services, contract number RFPP P50161. Kevin Hurley, Deputy Chief Finance and Treasury. Kevin, good morning.
Yes, sir. Good morning, Chair Durrett, Vice Chair Williamson, members of the MARTA Business Management Committee, and Mr. Greenwood and Mr. Cernath. I'm Kevin Hurley, the Deputy Chief Financial Officer at MARTA, and I'm here to present for Business Management Committee consideration a resolution to approve additional scope, time, and contractual authorization for the financial capacity and scenario planning services contract with HDR Engineering, Inc. Next slide. Our agenda for today consists of a discussion on the original purpose and need, the expanded scope, and staff's recommendation. Next slide. The original scope of the contract with HDR Engineering, Inc. was to assist MARTA staff by providing an updated financial capacity framework and model that estimates MARTA's capacity to support operations and prioritizing capital programs and projects. The framework and model would be inclusive of MARTA operations and maintenance, the MARTA State of Good Repair capital program, and the More MARTA City of Atlanta and Clayton County capital programs. The model allows for a 30-year look ahead with the ability to incorporate current and future revenue streams, and it will support FTA grant applications, allow for comparison of multiple scenarios, and is flexible and scalable. Next slide. The expanded scope is to provide additional training and knowledge transfer to MARTA staff on updating the model to include making structural changes. As the initial scope was consumed in preparing and presenting the FY24 City of Atlanta capital program and use of the model to City of Atlanta jurisdictional leadership. Furthermore, staff would like assistance in identifying funding and expense allocation best practices for transits with multiple jurisdictions, revenue sources, and modes of service. The proposed extension is for 12 months. The original authorization for the contract was $336,000. Staff is requesting an additional $150,000, which equates to approximately 825 hours of work, for a total not to exceed contract cost of $486,000. Next slide. I respectfully request approval of the MARTA Business Management Committee of the contract amendment for financial capacity and scenario planning services with HDR Engineering, Inc. Next slide. Return it back to you, Chair Durrett.
Thank you, Kevin. I'll entertain a motion and a second for this resolution. All right, we've received a motion and a second.
I didn't vote against it,
Okay. Discussion.
Does this have anything at all to do with the Atlanta audit?
If I may,
Raj?
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I mean, it's not specific to that, but hours requested could be used towards that. But most importantly, as Kevin mentioned, we had allocated certain number of hours to build the model. The model has been built. And we had also allocated certain number of hours in the initial contract approval to train our staff, and that could not be accomplished because of some of the other tasks that consume those hours, including briefing to the city of Atlanta and running all the 30-year scenarios on what projects could be done. So primary reason for the extension is to train our staff, a cross-section of our staff, including finance, grants, as well as the capital programs, and also, as part of the training, run different scenarios using different grant revenue assumptions and also sales tax assumptions.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is we're not being asked to pay $150,000 to support this audit. There's a lot of other stuff going on here. This may be used for that somewhat.
Minimally, probably, yeah.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Rod?
Yeah, I have a question. So does this capacity planning model address the allocation of resources that we use based on the projects that we are currently working with? Does it run those type of scenarios?
Well, number one, this model takes into consideration various sources of revenues we get.
All right.
Sales tax, grants, any other, state grants, if you will. When I said grants earlier, I meant FDA grants. And also it takes into consideration scope, budget, and schedule for the various capital programs. And based on the revenue assumptions and the number of projects we have, the scope, the timeline, and all that, see what can be accommodated when, if the revenue sources are adequate to do that. And also, a critical component of the model is if any revenues need to be brought forward, which means do we have to issue debt? If so, what is the cost of debt? How does that impact, and those kind of things.
Okay, okay. And this data that you're using in this framework question has to do with the data that comes out of this. These are the data that you use to make the financial decisions, whether we can support or how we can support the expansion of these projects in these different scenarios.
Yes, sir. The data, underlying data is by individual project that's prioritized and put forth by the board when they approve a specific line segment that Kerry Roca puts into the capital program. We're utilizing those projected requirements in the model.
Okay, all right, thank you.
So basically, this is a tool that we can use on an ongoing basis to put different scenarios together based upon current conditions and expected future conditions to allow us to make the best decisions. Is there any reason to think that this tool will become antiquated, or is it state-of-the-art today, and we should be able to use this for the foreseeable future?
The tool can be used for quite some time for our requirements. Certainly, the structural aspect that we're trying to get our staff trained up on is to be able to make adjustments in the structure of the tool to allow us to use it for some time going forward. The last model we've used for well over 20 years. So this will be something MARTA uses for quite a while.
If I may just add to that.
Sure.
Yeah, the model itself, yes, you can use it for quite some time. Obviously, the assumptions change, the revenue stream. So this will allow us to, I mean, it's not a static model.
Right.
It's kind of dynamic, and so.
Jacob.
Two questions. First one, just, we say tool and all this in model, like, just to confirm, like, is this an Excel-based model, or is this actually a tool that's like living in some type of third-party software?
No, it's an Excel-based model.
Okay. And then maybe just second question, I think like a lot of discussion, and obviously it would be really good, and maybe this is offline discussion, to just get a deep dive like briefing as to like how we built this, what are the assumptions, all of these pieces. I mean, if it's an Excel-based model, I think anybody can kind of run your own scenarios types of things, but just would be really good. And maybe that's something we've done prior with the board before I was on, but that'd be very helpful.
Certainly.
Are you thinking about like a work session, maybe?
I don't know if I would call it a work session or some type of session where we could better understand work session or whatever would be the best form.
Okay.
And we have, we have a product somewhat developed for that purpose. When we're delivering this with our city counterparts, we actually sat down to a 2 or 3 hour explanation of what went into it and how it works and all that. So I think, that can form the basis of this. And then I just really want to emphasize what Kevin's saying is it is a tool, but it's also the training that goes with the tool. I really like the idea that we're not just getting the product, we're actually doing that knowledge transfer with our own staff so that we can remain expert, if you will, as the years progress and take charge of those projections.
Thank you, Kali. Any other questions or comments? Not seeing any. Let's go ahead and vote. The resolution passes. Kevin, thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Okay, the next item on the agenda, item number 3, is a resolution authorizing the award of a single source contract for Swiftly Data Platform, RFPP P50345. Chief Information Officer Kirk Talbot, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Durrett, Chairman Durrett, Mr. Greenwood, Mr. Sreenath, and members of the Business Management Committee, good morning. Next slide, please. This morning, I'd like to ask for authorization to enter into a contract with Swiftly Incorporated for a 1-year period at a cost of $560,241.30. Here you see the history. We originally entered into a relationship with Swiftly last year, 2022, and you see the dollar amounts. Next slide, please. Swiftly is a service provider that takes our operational information about how the buses are moving, where they're supposed to be, where they actually are, and then gives us back a whole host of information that they've enhanced. So we entered into the relationship last year, and you see here the first list of benefits that we've received with them. Our request for this year is to enter into a more extended relationship so we can achieve some additional benefits. But I want to call your attention to, since we entered into the relationship with them last year, they began reading our data in real time and sending it back to us. And in fact, the data that we post out to our websites, that we put on the mobile app, everything else, has been enhanced by Swiftly for the past year. So we've seen an improvement of a jump from 47% accuracy when we began the relationship. The last number that we had was up to an 84% accuracy of buses mapped to routes. They give us an enhanced information out to our field supervisors so they can see where the vehicles are at in real time. They give us improved frequency for our vehicles. We went from a 2-minute frequency down to sub 10 seconds. So we're stating where every bus is located more often than once every 10 seconds. It's about 5 to 7 seconds now, thanks to Swiftly. And they also take our information, they put it out in the universal format. Any of you might be familiar with the GTFS real-time feed. By entering into this relationship, we will have access to some additional modules that we've not historically had access, namely the real-time passenger predictions. So you'll see a map there on the left. It will allow us to present to our customers, if you're at any given bus stop, whether it's a time point or not, this is when we anticipate the bus will arrive, based on both real-time information and historical. Service adjustment module, so if operations has a change, detours, anything like that, they're able to push that out to the passengers. Rider alerts is the other side to that. Improved access to data about on-time performance so that our planning and scheduling departments can look and see what did we say we were going to do, what did we actually deliver, and do we need to make changes to our plans. And then some operational analysis tools that help to understand where we have on-time performance issues, whatnot. Next slide, please. Our strategy during this 1-year extension is to go out and compete. When we initially did research last year, we found no other company that provided this same capability of being able to take our data in real time and enhance it for the benefit of our customers. But again, we want to go out and do that during the year, and that will take a competitive process, some length of time. So the request this morning is approval for a contract with Swiftly, single source in the amount of $560,241.30. The Office of Diversity and Inclusion has not assigned a DBE goal for this since it is a single source contract.
Thank you, Kirk. I'll entertain a motion and a second for approval of this resolution. All right, we've received the motion and the second. I'll entertain opportunities to ask questions and comments. I've got one for you, Kirk.
Yes, sir.
In our train stations, and as you're approaching train stations, you get hopefully good information about when the next train is coming so that you know whether or not you've got to break a sweat. What is our plan for, with this kind of information, to be able to put similar real-time displays at various bus stops of all kinds?
Excellent question. This lays the foundation that we have that data. We have that data at a bus stop level. So it becomes a question of what technologies, what capabilities can we put out at the bus stops that's sustainable, that will. One of the things we've been working on with the planning department is enhancements to the bus stops. There's new bus stop signage, and on that signage, we've been putting up a link to a web page that will allow you to see real-time arrival information for the buses. It will give you information about other routes, where the vehicles are at. So kind of the hook, if you will, is that bus stop signage, so that no matter where you are in the system, you look up and you can see, oh, here's where I get more information. And it will be fed by this system.
Okay, thank you, Kirk.
Certainly.
Bill?
I'm a little suspect of a company called Swifty. So would you mind telling us a little bit about this company and where they're from and how'd you find them and what do they do and that kind of thing? Just a brief.
Certainly. So Swiftly entered the market, I don't have the full history on it, but it's been a few years. They came into the market realizing that a lot of the incumbent players were not providing up real-time information, really good analytics. So they made their name on taking data from bus companies, transit operators, and improving that. We've been talking with them probably about 3 or 4 years because they're utilized in about half of the transit agencies in North America. And they saw an opportunity in the market that people needed to know what was happening in their systems, both for the riders and from a planning standpoint. And the names like Trapeze and others never came up with those tools to offer them. So.
Is this an American company?
Yes, sir. It is an American company.
Okay, because there's, the European transit operators have been doing stuff like this for a while that I'm a little bit aware of and not. So I'm wondering, I was wondering if it's an American company and how long it's been in this business and that kind of thing.
I would be remiss if I told you what year they were incorporated. I'm not sure of that. But I know they've been active in this industry for at least 5 or 6 years in North America. And they're in North America. They're an American company. Yes, sir.
Stacy?
Thank you. Quick question for you. So just looking at the original PO amount and the extension and this request for the 1-year extension, it literally doubles the amount of the 2022-2023 combined POs. So does that mean, and I'm literally just looking at the slides, these 5 new benefits are the reason for increasing the fee, the PO amount, like literally?
Yes, correct. So when we originally brought the relationship with Swiftly in, it was to enhance the accuracy of where are our buses and what routes are they mapped to. That was the initial intent, and we worked with them to get our frequency reporting below 10 seconds. When operations and customer experience saw the capabilities that their other tool sets had, they requested that we enter into a broader and deeper relationship with Swiftly. That's why we have a larger ask here than the original relationship. And the plan is to go out and see if the market has changed. Are there any entrants that have come in the past 12 months that can do this at a more competitive price?
And when will you do that analysis?
We'll begin that RFP process within the next month or two, right? So that we make sure that we have that in place. One of the things we don't want to do is turn off this service. If we were to turn off this service, our accuracy of vehicles would go back to what it was, right? So we want to make sure that there's a continuous. And the good news is if we find some other corporation that does this, we can switch the feed instantaneously so that there's no disruption to our passengers.
Thank you.
Certainly.
Valencia?
The real passenger predictions, can you talk a little bit more about that? What does that mean?
So what they do with the data is they have been watching our route performance for months and months and months. Pardon me. So they have a historical norm of patterns that they see. They pull that in and they pull in where's the vehicle on Route 5 right now and where would we normally anticipate, how long would we normally anticipate it would take to arrive at your stop? They look at the history, they take all that, they run it through some very complex software, and they come up and say, you should expect the next bus on Route 5 to arrive at your stop in 13 minutes. And it gives you that countdown that you have on the rail side, on the bus side. But if you think about it, bus is much more complicated, right? You've got traffic lights, you've got accidents, you've got things that rail doesn't have to contend with. Ideally, doesn't have to contend with.
All right, thank you.
Okay, I don't see any other requests for comment or questions, so I'll call the question. Let's vote on,
Just quickly, to piggyback on Mayor Floyd, and you did mention that it is an American-owned company.
Yes,
You
ma'am.
know where?
San Francisco.
Sanford, yes.
San Francisco. Thank you.
okay, I'll call the question. Let's vote on the resolution. The resolution passes. Thank you, Kirk.
Thank you.
I think you stay at the lectern, and the next item on the agenda is a resolution authorizing a modification in contractual authorization for specialized professional services, P47520.
Thank you, Mr. Durrett. Mr. Greenwood, Mr. Srinath, and members of the committee. Yes, you're correct. If all goes well, I should have one other item after this, just to set expectations. Next slide, please. This morning, I'm requesting board authorization to add funds to P47520. This was a contract for specialized professional services that was competitively awarded in 2021, whereby we pull in technical skills that we do not have in-house. So they could be very specialized technologies, emerging technologies like artificial intelligence, machine learning, the sorts of things that we don't generally staff for. And in 2021, we originally forecasted the amount of demand that we would have to our team and the skills that we would need to pull in. And in essence, what has happened is the amount of demand for technology services has exceeded what we originally forecast. So we're asking for authorization from the board to spend additional dollars on this contract. One of the things that's important to note here is that this contract was entered into to provide technical services for multiple departments, not just technology. So it's a joint contract that supports cybersecurity, capital programs, safety, quality assurance, police, and technology. And each department pulls in the necessary technical skills that they have. In our case, the contract was awarded to 6 firms competitively. And whenever we need a certain skill set, we go to one of those 6 firms and we pull in the skill set at a pre-negotiated rate. You see on the left at the bottom there the initial forecast. We anticipated certain projects, CCTV upgrades, a whole host of infrastructure upgrades, radio system upgrade, APARC, a number of things, even supported the train control system. But since FY22, sorry, in 21 when we set the original forecast, we've had a number of additional projects come onto our plate that required additional technical services. This is not a complete list, but it gives you an idea of the types of things that have come in since FY22. Security control upgrade, police CAD implementation, the enhancements that we've been making with customer experience team, Oracle Cloud migration, a whole host of Power BI dashboards, analytics that we've been implementing throughout the organization, even down to the move out of the annex facility. Next slide, please. So our strategy, and want to make sure this is clear, we have, on the last slide, not yet, we have a breakdown of the numbers. Our strategy is to increase the authorization by $8,930,097. The capital funds have been set aside, so this is a board authorization to spend against this contract. We do have option years in the future that have board authorization, but given that forecast has dramatically changed from where we were in FY21 when we set this and started in FY22, we're going to go out and competitively solicit a new contract that allows us to re-baseline our forecast, the amount of money that we spend, incorporate new factors that are coming down the line, such as the BRT, ART implementations, the new fare collection system, and better reflect the forecasted demand that we see. So our plan is to go out and competitively do that during this remaining year on the contract. I don't get to bring good news, but this is one piece of good news. The Office of Diversity and Inclusion set a 30% DBE goal, and last that I heard, we were at 32% participation. So this was a very healthy and competitive environment, which we're very pleased to bring. Next slide, please. Here you see the number breakdown. Our original forecasts were the first line. We anticipated $6 million spent in both FY22-23. And FY24, we optimistically hoped that we would be able to pull skill sets in-house and require less of this. In fact, that has changed. And so our reforecast is the request today for an additional $8.9 million. You'll see the option years 1 and 2, so FY25 and 26. As I said before, our strategy is not to exercise those. By FY25, we should have a new contract in place that's competitively procured with the new numbers. You see the revised total. This $8.9 million is our request today coming out of capital program, which has already been allocated for these purposes.
Thank you, Kurt. I'll entertain a motion and a second to approve this resolution. Properly moved and seconded. Discussion.
Kurt, do services offered under this contract help us with the call box issue? Oh.
Yes, sir. The short answer is that's one project that will be pulling these skills in.
Okay.
Yes.
Any other questions? Then let's go ahead and vote. The resolution passes. Okay, Kurt, third and final one. Resolution authorizing a modification and contractual authorization for renewal of maintenance support for Teledriver 8.1.6 Driver Management System, LOA L39961.
Thank you, Chairman Durrett. Mr. Greenwood, Mr. Srinath, and members of the committee. One last brief topic. Next slide, please. This is a request to add $329,019 to the existing relationship that we have with Teledriver, and to extend the contract for 1 year with one option year, which I'll explain in just a second. Teledriver is the system, for those that aren't familiar with it, is the system that we use for timekeeping and balancing out all of the rules that we have around labor within the organization. So both bus and rail use the Teledriver system to take the punch clocks, use that to then figure out what that means, that then gets handed over to payroll, right? So it's at the very core of how we pay our operators, maintenance, everybody that's working on an hourly basis. Next slide, please. There's benefits to it. It gives us consistency. During this extension period, and I want to explain why. During this extension period, our intent is to take a look at options for Teledriver, because it was originally brought in a few years ago, and there have been some opportunities for improvement that we encountered. For instance, during COVID, there was additional information we wanted to be able to track about people's time attendance and time in attendance that the system had not originally been configured for. So, no surprise, during the pandemic, we found some gaps in what we needed versus what it had. And so the plan is to take a look at it, and there are fundamentally 3 options that we have before us. One is to upgrade to the latest version of Teledriver. which is probably honestly the simplest because people are familiar with teledriver. We look at the latest and we effectively re-implement with all the new requirements that we have in the system. The second is to look at the option of implementing Oracle Time and Labor as a new workforce management system. So part of the Oracle family, there is an offering that allows this. But we have to analyze to figure out if that's in the best interest of the agency and our employees or not. And the third option is to possibly go out and compete for a whole new system. The reason that we're asking for a one-year extension and a one-year option is because if we determine that competing and finding a whole new system is the best route for the agency, it will take us a few months to figure out that option. But implementation will be extremely delicate and detailed because we're talking about the system that everybody punches into and says, hey, you didn't get my time right. Right, so we want to make sure that we have time to not only implement the technology across the entire agency, but we have a chance to train all of the employees, which is a Herculean task and something this critical. Right, so we want to make sure that we have options. We hope to be able to get it done in that one-year envelope, but we're requesting respectfully for that one-year option. Next slide, please. Here are the financials. You see the original award was in 2017, and we've had a series of extensions, honestly, because touching a system like this is so complicated and involved. I think there has been a historical desire to try and leave things where they're at. That being said, it's diverged enough from the original implementation that we need to address that. Today, we're asking for additional funds of $329,019, which you see brings up the total contract amount across the history to $1.1 million. The Office of Diversity and Inclusion did not assign this a DBE goal as it was a single source procurement originally. However, if we go through the competitive process, obviously we'll be assigning a DBE goal that's appropriate. I believe that's the last slide.
Thank you, Kirk. I'll entertain a motion and a second for approval of this resolution. Properly moved and seconded. Discussion. Not seeing any desire to, we're prepared to vote. So let's vote on this resolution. It looks like it passed. It's not popping up for me. I'm going to declare that it passed. And Kirk, you can rest now.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Other matters, notification of intent memorandum, State of Georgia Cisco hardware maintenance support contract for information only in your packet. Is there anything else to come before this committee? Then this committee meeting is adjourned, and we will prepare for the next one.
Programs Committee meeting for Thursday, July 27th, 2023. First item on the agenda is the approval of the June 22nd, 2023 Planning and Capital Programs Committee meetings. Could I have a motion and a second? Moved by Mr. Durrett, seconded by Mr. Worthy. Any discussion of the minutes? Will you please vote? And it has passed. Next item on the agenda is a resolution authorizing agreement to support construction of the Brookhaven City Hall at MARTA's Brookhaven Station, DeKalb County, Brookhaven, Georgia. Ms. Robin Boyd, Director of Real Estate, you have the floor.
Good morning, Chair Blakely, Vice Chair Powers, GM Greenwood, Ms. Rocha, and members of the committee. If you could go to the next slide, please. So at Brookhaven, they are constructing a city hall. We've executed a 50-year ground lease with the city of Brookhaven. And for their contractor, they need staging, laydown, parking. So there are two lots. The lots on the east side of the station, the two lots further to the south, they would take 279 spaces. And this would be under a license agreement and the appraised value for the fair market value of the parking is $368,280 over a 2-year period. Now, if they finish sooner, they can terminate that license. And I've got the acquisition history that's written here, when they were purchased, how much they were acquired for. And there is no FTA interest in these lots. So if you could go to the next slide. So this is on the east side of the station. The city hall will be on the west side of the station, directly across from the parking. They would take the bottom, the smaller lot at the bottom, the smaller portion of the middle lot, and DeKalb County has COVID testing currently at the lower end of the lot, and we've moved them to the where you can see the squiggly red that says moved COVID testing, and they've already agreed to that. So if you could go to the next slide, please. So requesting a resolution authorizing execution of a license agreement to support construction of the Brookhaven City Hall at MARTA's Brookhaven Station, DeKalb County, Brookhaven, Georgia. And the last slide is thank you.
Thank you, Robin. I'll entertain a motion in a second. It has been properly moved and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, please vote. The resolution has passed. Item number 3 on the agenda is resolution authorizing the disposal of permanent easements to the Georgia Department of Transportation, GDOT, for State Route 3 road widening project along Northside Drive near the Vine City pedestrian bridge in Fulton County, Georgia. Ms. Robin Boyd, once again.
Okay, the next slide, please. As we stated, it's a road widening project along Northside Drive. It's near our Vine City station and near the pedestrian bridge for the stadium. And these would be under a non-exclusive permanent easement agreement, so we would retain the fee ownership. The appraised value is $168,200, and I've got the acquisition history of the parcels. It's I believe two tax parcels, and there is FTA interest which will be obtained. In the next slide, please. So you can see the location near the pedestrian bridge, near the stadium, and then the drawing on the right is the easement. And the next slide. So this is a resolution authorizing the disposal of permanent easements to the Georgia Department of Transportation for road widening along Northside Drive from Road Street to MLK Junior Drive in Fulton County, Atlanta, Georgia. And the next slide, thank you.
I'll entertain a motion in a second. It has been properly moved and seconded. Any questions, discussion? Mr. Durrett.
Hey, Robin, this is a relatively small easement. So they have plans to widen North Side on the west side of North Side, near where that pedestrian bridge lands.
I don't know if it's the east side or the west side. I just know that it's near the pedestrian bridge. And part of the valuation included, they'll have to relocate some of our benches at the Vine City and relocate a wayfinding sign. So that included some consequential damages, about $20,000. But it won't impact, even during construction, I made sure it won't impact any patron experience. But that's for sidewalk widening and ADA improvements.
Okay. Thank you.
If there are no additional discussion points or questions, can we vote? Resolution has passed.
Thank you.
Robin. Next item, item number 4, resolution authorizing a modification and contractual authorization for Oracle Primavera P6 Cloud Service, Unifier and Professional Services P43333 by Mr. Calvin Davis.
Good morning. Good morning, board members. I'm requesting resolution authorizing a modification in contractual authorization for Oracle Primavera P6 Cloud Services, Primavera Unified Cloud Service, and Professional Consulting Services, RFPP P4333. I'm Calvin Days, Manager, Capital Improvement Program Budgeting and Reporting. Next slide, please. The purpose of this request is the platform Unifier. It's the Unifier inclusive of the P6 as well as the existing contract, which included consulting services. And the initial contract had 150 licenses. And we requesting to expand the usage to a total of 200 additional licenses. Next slide, please. So going through the history of it, the initial contract originated in 2019, and we added an additional, requested and approved an additional 50 licenses, bringing the total to 200. The initial contract, going back with the 5-year term, the attention on that was a kind of a phased approach as we were getting the systems in place as well as getting acclimated to it and the expansion of our projects. So at the August 2020 date, that was recognized in the usage or in the need for additional contracts. There was a modification in 2022, which was renewing or extending the original 150 usage licenses. Coming forward to the request now is to extend the contract, the 2019, the additional 150 license we need to extend now. The boots are running now, and we need 200 additional licenses. So this would bring the entire threshold to 400 licenses. The 150, the 50, and the 200, extending the contract to 3 years. The column to the left, the amount shows the increased amount, and the life to date, the 2.9, we're asking for $2,900,000 for the 3-year extension, which will bring the life date to $5.3 million. Next slide, please. And so what the platform does, in essence, is the Unifier and the P6. This is the central portal of our systems to actually manage, recognize the usage, the reporting of our capital program. The neat piece is this is what we're doing now. A central repository. Previously, the systems have been fragmented between Excel sheets, SharePoints. So now we have a central portal. This is actually implemented now. These are some of the business processes. Automated workflow, the project data packages. So what we have now is governance when the projects come in with the phase level. So we're able to track each phase of the cost of it from implementation to actually the final closeout. If we need inspector reports, one of the neat pieces in terms of the estimates, particularly life-to-date numbers. So we're going back to the origination date. We can pull those in real time, actuals versus budget. And again, these reports previously, these activities had been fragmented and through multiple processes, which created through Excel sheets, which created more opportunities for errors and tracking. So this is it's a neat tool that is in place now. The other piece that's kind of unique, and we're not new to this. I'm sure many of us are familiar with the Oracle platform. But again, this is a global platform with the unifier. It's used throughout the world, from Austria to Canada, but also even one of our reputable peers, LA Metro, they use it now. But we are vested in this now. Again, our effort is to extend and to get, as we're expanding with the upspend of our products and our services and particularly the projects in the field, they need to grab this data right now in real time. So that's the critical piece of the need to request the additional user fees. Next slide, please. So again, the previous slide highlighted where we are now, and the slide here highlights what we're going to be doing with this rollout activity. FTA, that's something critical. Throughout the authority and industry, sometimes these reports and the FTA coding deviates from internal or other trended reporting codes. This will line, as you look on the right, these are SEC descriptions. We'll be able to spit out reports in alliance directly with the FTA in real time, which also helps particularly even considering grant requests. But again, these are some of the highlights of the forecasting, the project forecasting. And so we have a standard forecast, whereas a forecast comes out now and forecast to forecast. And you may ask, well, how is that derived? There'd be a clear line of sight of how that forecast is created and what it's dependent on. But the dashboards, which is really neat. And the other piece that kind of at the tail end is a risk register in terms of how and what it works, but tells us as we're going into these projects, what are the risks. You kind of like a granular type of SWOT analysis of what factors should we consider, and we can put numbers on those and say where we're going. And then we can assess the likelihood, as well as when we're looking at annual versus 10-year, 3-year spends and budgets in terms of those changes, and we catch it on the front end. Next slide, please. So this concludes the request for the resolution authorizing the modification of RFPPP 4333.
Thank you, Mr. Days. I'll entertain a motion. Has it already been moved and seconded? Okay, it's been moved by Mr. Durrett, seconded by Ms. Hardage. Any discussion or questions for Mr. Days? No? Could we vote, please? The resolution has passed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda, number 5, resolution authorizing approval of center running bus rapid transit, BRT, with flyover to Barge Road as the amendment to the locally preferred alternative, LPA, for the Campbellton Community Investment Corridor Project. Ms. Trace Roberson, Transit System Project Planner. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, committee chair, board members, Colleague Greenwood, Carrie Rocha. I am so excited to present this resolution on today for the Campbellton Community Investment Corridor Center Running BRT with the amendment to be a flyover to Barge Road. Next slide. I'll share with you some project information, remind you of the board-approved LPA in July of 2022, give you a little bit of information about the current status of this project, and then share with you the amendment that we are considering today as an improvement to an already great project, share the key benefits and the next steps, and respectfully request your action today. As we move on to the next slide, I will give you this project information. Next slide. The project is from Oakland City to Barge Road. It is 6 miles. We have identified 9 stations. I'd like to highlight that we are currently at 92% dedicated lanes for the project, and we have improved the travel time over the existing Route 83 that serves this corridor, and we have definitely taken into consideration safety, bike and pedestrian facilities for the project. Moving on to the next slide. This is just a reminder, next slide, of what you approved as the LPA, which is a center running bus rapid transit. This improves travel time. We have wider sidewalks. Again, we have considered safety, and this project definitely have premium amenities. We consider this to be designed as a gold standard BRT, and you approved this in July of 2022. Next slide. Since the approval, we have entered into project development with FTA's Capital Investment Grant Program. We have submitted our NEPA checklist to the FTA. In the spring of this year, we received $8.1 million for this project. We are very excited and happy about that. And we are currently at approaching 30% design on the project. Next slide. So today I am presenting to you the opportunity to improve the project even more so by proposing that we put a flyover or a bridge, if you will, from Greenbrier Parkway to the Barge Road Park and Ride. This will be a bridge or flyover exclusively for buses only. And so we will have a bridge over Highway 154 that brings you to the Greenbrier Mall stop, and then the bridge over 85 will take you to the Barge Road. Currently, we are estimating this will probably range between 15 million to 25 million, and it does not exceed the currently allocated $300 million that we have allocated for the project. Next slide. Just to kind of show you what this does, our current design, the station at Greenbrier is in front of Greenbrier Mall, and then we use Greenbrier Parkway and Barge Road to get to the last stop, which is at the Barge Road Park and Ride. This is some rural areas, so we have worked with our key stakeholders and come up with better solutions. And the better solution that we are recommending today is the flyover to take us from the Greenbrier Mall station to the last stop, which is Barge Road. And in this proposal, the station will be in the rear of the mall as opposed to in the front of the mall. Next slide. So some of the benefits to this is that we will be minimizing the right-of-way impacts on Barge Road. We won't have to replace and do a lot of construction there to interrupt that road. It is faster, and it improves overall operations because there are some bottlenecks at some of the intersections, particularly at Headland Drive and Langford Parkway. And the flyover supports what we call gold standard BRT objective, and this is opportunity for us to have premium service and make it as much rail-like as possible. And the last benefit is just it's a direct access from Greenbrier Station to the end of the line. Next slide. If this is approved today, we will begin our design on the flyover. And we will initiate special studies on the overall project. FTA will give us our class of action, and we will continue throughout this summer to work with our key stakeholders and community with outreach. Next slide. So today, I respectfully request of the board to approve center running BRT with a flyover to Barge Road as the amendment to the locally preferred alternative for the Campbellton Community Investment Corridor project. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. Exciting progress. Could I have, it's already been moved and seconded, properly moved and seconded. Are there any questions or discussion points? Mr. Durrett.
This is in, right?
Yes, it is.
Are you bending over backwards to communicate with her what we're doing? And are you convinced that we have an appropriately robust public engagement process to explain all this?
Yes, sir. Councilmember Overstreet is very much aware and very much supportive. And we have had multiple meetings to share this information. I would say Councilmember Overstreet is a champion of the flyover amendment option.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Farson?
Yeah, I've had the chance to be on this Route 83, and I do know so it would avoid, this flyover would avoid running into that residential piece where it really narrows down.
Absolutely.
Okay, so it takes
Yes.
you right from the mall over to Tavares Road,
Yes,
which is
sir.
where the end of line is.
Yes, sir.
I think that's a great alternative to get there.
Yes, sir.
Because if you rode that bus, everybody knows how narrow that gets in that, and that would affect all those residents along that road.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
A great option. All right, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
If there's no further discussion, could we please vote? It looks as though it's passed, although it's not officially showing. Yes, it is passed. Thank you. And you're up again. Next item on the agenda for today, presented by Ms. Robeson, is resolution, to approve the recommended locally preferred alternative LBA for Beaufort Highway ART, presented by Ms. Tracy Robeson, Transit System Project Planner.
Thank you, Committee Chair. This resolution is to approve the recommended locally preferred alternative for the Beaufort Highway ART. Next slide. A little bit about this route. It is served currently by MARTA's Route 39, and this is our, Route 39 is the #1 ranking route for ridership, serving over 5,000 patrons a day. It's a 10-mile corridor, and it is from the Lindbergh Center MARTA rail station to the Doraville Center, rail station, and it runs through Atlanta, Brookhaven, Chamblee, as well as Doraville. And we have done a continual outreach with all of those jurisdictions. Next slide, please. The purpose and need is really focuses on providing fast, frequent, and reliable service to a corridor that is already serving over 5,000 daily riders. So it really just makes sense to provide a more premium service for a corridor that is so heavily utilized. Next slide. Some characteristics of ART I wanted to share today. It is used on high-density corridors. It operates in mixed traffic. There are shorter wait times. We will have transit signal priority on this corridor. We talked about that a little earlier today. We have queue jump lanes that will help improve the bus travel time, and as well as we'll have enhanced amenities at the stops along this corridor. Next slide. A little bit about the history and the current status. This was approved in the DeKalb Transit Master Plan and later committed in the 15th Amendment for MARTA. We've done a lot of community meetings and pop-ups and tours of the corridor, and we've done our due diligence with our technical analysis and working internally with our service planning. We are currently approaching 30% design, and we anticipate to continue to have ongoing community outreach and that ongoing coordination with all of the municipalities along this corridor. Next slide. Again, the engagement, I would say, has been robust. Again, we have multiple municipalities that we've had to coordinate with. We were coordinating on a monthly basis when this project was initiated, and now we coordinate with everyone on a quarterly basis. We had public meetings last summer and also this summer, and those forums are in person, virtual, and we've also had some Spanish-only meetings as well. If you will take a look at the photo on the lower right corner, this is, I'm going to call this a signature public meeting. This meeting is probably historic because we did this meeting in the dark. We had a power outage from a thunderstorm, and that did not stop our thunder. We presented in the dark, and it was one of the most engaging public meetings I have ever attended. So congratulations to all of our staff and consultant teams that made it happen. Again, this corridor is very diverse, so we make sure that anything that we do, outreach materials, is in Spanish, Chinese, Korean, as well as Vietnamese. We have done online surveys, on-board surveys, but our most robust engagement has been pop-up events. Because we like to meet the people where they are, and this is where we've gotten the most input from our patrons, just meeting them at key destinations along the way, such as the Farmers Market, Latin American Association, Plaza Fiesta, and so many key places on the corridor. We have, on the technical side, have many internal workshops with the MARTA staff, with the consultant team, really going over different methodologies, planning expectations, and a lot of interaction to determine where these stations really need to be. And then we also had a corridor tour last year to make sure that all of our key stakeholders had an opportunity to give their input on where the stations' locations would be for this project, and that was very well received, and you see some photos of that particular corridor tour. Every jurisdiction came and participated and gave their input, along with GDOT and some internal people as well. Next slide. To share just a little bit about some of the criteria that we use to, help us determine proper locations for the stations. We took in consideration ridership and how many boardings were at some of the current stops along the corridor. We had an opportunity to do analysis on a quarter mile, half mile, and a third mile stop spacing. We definitely considered the land use and the constructability, taking a look at the different utilities on the corridor as it is today. And safety was really a big priority in this corridor. That is what we heard most from our interaction with the citizens. They wanted this to be safe, and so we are coordinating with the sidewalk improvements and the projects that GDOT has in place in the corridor. Next slide. A little bit about some technical analysis, some summary from that output. We'll be serving on an annual basis almost 2 million riders in this corridor. Implementing the BRT improves the travel time anywhere from 2 to 5 minutes. Our capital cost is at $49 million for this project, and we are impacting residents below the poverty level. 16% of the residents in this corridor is below poverty level, and 19% is limited English proficiency. Next slide. And this is our current timeline. We are here today for the LPA recommendation. We are approaching 30%, continuing outreach, and after this, we will engage in our environmental studies, do final design until we get this constructed, built, and in service in 2026. Next slide. So today I am respectfully requesting that the MARTA board approve arterial rapid transit along Beaufort Highway corridor, connecting the Lindbergh MARTA station to the Doraville station as the locally preferred alternative for Beaufort Highway. And this will include transit signal priority. The stops are about a third of a mile apart. We have 25 proposed stop pairs along the way, and each stop will have distinct ART shelters with great seating, real-time information system, and trash receptacles. Next slide. I'm requesting approval of the locally preferred alternative for Beaufort Highway, ART.
Thank you, Ms. Robeson. Could I have a motion and a second? It has been properly moved and seconded. Are there any questions or discussion? Mr. Frierson.
Yes, one second. This is a wonderful project, and we are so excited to see it move forward. I'm pretty sure that Commissioner Michelle Long Spears was maybe involved in some of the stakeholder discussions there. I know that she was very, very much a part of the conversation. So, and she was all in favor of moving this project forward in that
Yes, sir.
space, right?
Yes, sir. She was in the dark
She was.
public meeting. She was there.
And that's wonderful. This is a great part of that community, and it's well deserved. So anyway, I'm champion for it. I'm glad to see it move forward.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Ms. Scott?
Yes. First of all, thank you. I'm a champion as well for this project. My question is, during the public hearings, did you hear any comparisons between the MARTA service and the private transportation companies that serve a lot of that area?
Yes, that question or comment or concern came up at some of the meetings, and people just kind of wanted to know whether or not the private service would still be in effect. There were not any, I would say, negative thoughts or comments, just general question as to whether or not they would continue, and if they would be allowed to use the stops once the ART is actually implemented.
The question was whether or not the private transportation companies would be able to use the MARTA
Yes,
stops.
those were the general types of comments or questions from citizens around the private.
And what was the answer to that?
The answer to that was they are currently using our stops.
Yes.
So I would venture to say that would be something that they would have to work out with, MARTA's leadership to determine whether or not that could still be a situation once the ART is.
So a yes or no was not?
No, we
to the
did.
public.
No, we did not give a yes or no answer. Just that would be further coordination within MARTA and those private companies.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, I mean, MARTA's position is that these are our stops, and we have no prearranged agreement for them to be using them, and barring some unforeseen miracle, I don't see us allowing that kind of usage.
Thank you. Ms. Hardish?
Just a quick question. When we introduced the Summer Hill project recently, we called it Rapid. Is the ART going to be Rapid as well?
We're working on a branding
Okay.
idea for the ART, but So far, it's not been included in the
All right,
rapid.
I knew I hadn't heard that, but I just didn't know if we had a name yet. Thank you.
Yeah.
If there are no further questions, could we vote, please? Resolution has passed. Thank you, Ms. Robertson.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda, Ms. Kelly Davis. Resolution authorizing the solicitation of proposals for final design services of the South DeKalb Transit Hub, RFP P50294. Ms. Kelly Davis, Director of Facilities Program Management. Good morning.
Good morning, Chair Blakely, Vice Chair Powers, Mr. Greenwood, Ms. Roca, and other members of the board. As Ms. Blakely said, I am here to request the resolution authorizing the solicitation of proposals for the final design services for the South DeKalb Transit Hub, RFP P50294. Next slide, please. So a little bit of history about this. This initiative started back in 2007 with the Livable Centers Initiative study that recommended redevelopment around the transit facility. So this transit hub has been a long time coming in conjunction with several corridors to serve our existing bus service, which is the number 9, which is Boulevard and Tilson Road, the 15, which is Candler Road, 74, which is Flat Shoals Road, and the 186, which is Rainbow Drive and South DeKalb. This was also recommended in the South DeKalb Transit Master Plan. It is included in the 15th Amendment, and we look to address some rider challenges such as multiple stops around the area, inconvenient transfers, and inadequate waiting conditions. Some of the project goals that the challenges will address will be to construct a new fully equipped transit hub. We're going to provide consolidated transfer location with enhanced passenger amenities and services. We want to provide a dedicated space for bus layovers and relief point for operators. Also, a multimodal access to MARTA services. We are ensuring accommodations for current routes and future high-capacity services, and also looking forward to design for future BRT service in this area. Next slide, please. We are currently wrapping up the preliminary design, and we are ready to proceed with the final design in September. So this specific expertise that will be required, but are not limited to project management, architectural and engineering, facility to system design services, system safety certification support services, and public engagement services. Now, the Office of D&I has not yet assigned a DBE requirement. They are reviewing, and that will come later on. We will have a goal. We just don't have one yet. Next slide, please. As far as costs. Right now, at the 30% mark, we are anticipating that the construction cost is approximately $22 million, and the total project costs at $37 million. Using the metrics that we do, that gives us makes us believe that the estimated consulting cost will be $2.2 million. As you see at the schedule, we are right in the middle of it. Right now, we just finished our site development and environmental studies. We are looking to do the design again starting in the fall, and also the site acquisition. From there, we'll move on to procurement, then construction, and we are hoping to be open and operational in late 2026. Next slide, please. So with that, I now respectfully request a resolution authorizing the solicitation of the final design services for the South DeKalb Transit Hub, RFP P50294. And with that, I will turn it back over to you, Chair Blakely. Thank you.
Ms. Davis. Could I get a motion in a second, please? It has been properly moved and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Ms. Scott?
Thank you.
Just for clarification, we have, I know that we had several hiccups around environmental studies,
We did.
and we have solved those problems.
They have been addressed. We actually got a phase 3 ESA, which is an environmental assessment study. I'm sorry, I'm not very good with acronyms, but we did get our phase 3 backwards, and it was more favorable than we believe. So we are able to move forward without too many issues.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I know that has been a concern in the community.
It has, which is why you have not seen this project before now. We did want to get those issues resolved before we brought it to the board.
And I know there's a community meeting being held in the area on this weekend, so I wanted to verify that question, that we have moved past the environmental issues.
We have, yes,
Thank
ma'am.
Mr. Frierson?
Yeah, once again, we're happy to see this project move forward. This is a huge impact for that part of the community, the South DeKalb community and adjacent streets, Candle Road, and it's $37 million investment in that space, so I hope that the residents in that community will see that we're going to move forward with something that they can put their hands on in that community to really help them understand that transit is important, that it will make a difference in that space. And as we start to champion moving transit further east, we need them to support all these efforts.
That lives in this corridor,
Yeah.
it is greatly needed. So I am extremely proud to champion it from the MARTA
Absolutely.
side.
Absolutely. So we're glad to see it move forward, and we've gotten past some of those environmental issues. So
We
great.
have.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you for all your efforts.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Greenwood, for your efforts too in making this happen, and your team. All right. Appreciate it.
And then Kelly, just a last question for me. As far as the DBE goal, I know that we're wanting to start design in the fall. When will that goal be established? Just so they
I'm
have
gonna
enough
lean
time
on Ms.
to-
Nash to answer that question.
Okay.
Okay.
So this particular RFP is still going through the procurement process. So at some point in that process, they will send it to our office for a DBE goal to be assessed. That has not happened yet, but once we get it, we usually can assess it fairly quickly.
Okay.
It just hasn't gotten to that part in the procurement process just yet.
Okay. Just want to make sure that, potential proposers have the opportunity to put the right team together and in place and respond appropriately.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. Are there any any other questions? No? Can we vote, please? The motion has passed. Thank you, Ms. Davis.
All right. Thank you very much.
Are there any other matters to come before this committee? If not, the committee meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Time we're going to call to our External Relations Committee meeting to order. Number 1 on the agenda, approval of the May 25th, 2023 External Relations Committee meeting minutes. Do I have a motion? Oh, thank you. The screen has changed. Thanks. It's been first by Ms. Hardage, second by Mr. Durrett. Let us vote. Any questions? Hearing none, let us vote. The approval of the minutes have passed. First on our agenda, we will have a resolution authorizing a modification in contractual authorization for professional services for homeless outreach. Resolution number LOAL47029. We will hear from Mr. John Gordon, Customer Engagement Manager. Mr. Gordon.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, GM Greenwood, Chief Allen, and the members of the External Relations Committee. My apologies. My name is John Gordon. I am the Customer Engagement Manager in the Department of Customer Experience and Strategy. I'd like to bring your attention to item number 2 on the agenda for the resolution authorizing modification of professional services contract for homeless outreach L47029. Next slide, please. I'll start by giving a brief history of the program and its impact. Then we'll look at the human lives that lie behind the numbers, what we call the Chronicles of Hope. I'll briefly introduce you to the case managers, and finally, I'll get to the point, a request for a contract modification to allow MARTA to continue its essential work. Next slide, please. Next month, MARTA's contract with Hope Atlanta will be in its 3rd year. Under the contract terms, Hope Atlanta provides us with case managers who are skilled with working directly with people experiencing homelessness. Since the contract started in 2020, the number of case managers has grown from 2 to 6. They work 3 shifts daily between the hours of 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. to cover the rail, bus, parking lots, and other MARTA properties as needed. All case managers are equipped with police radios, and they work with MARTA police and field protective specialists as needed. As I mentioned earlier, case managers are deployed on the MARTA system daily. However, they have a dedicated office at the 5-point stations on the Peachtree side of the station. There they conduct all of the necessary documentation they need to do. As part of the contract, MARTA has reserved 10 beds for people willing to accept services, 5 beds for men at the Gateway Center, 5 beds for women at Salvation Army. I won't play the video link, but I encourage board members to view the inspiring video that highlights our case manager, Gloria Woodard's heroic work. Next slide, please. We have strong evidence that this program aids at-risk MARTA riders who need help. As of last month, more than 3,600 people have accepted services. That number includes 1,112 people who have been sheltered, 142 families with children who were connected to services, almost 80 people who were reconnected with their families, nearly 2,800 people who were referred to other resources such as Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, better known as SNAP, and or the Social Security Administration. The MARTA Hope program has also connected about 120 people to permanent housing, 90 people to the Georgia Works Jobs program, and 205 homeless veterans to social services and other benefits. Next slide, please. People's lives have been changed, and it's much bigger than just the numbers. This slide is a transcript of a handwritten note from a woman who has slept in a MARTA bed at the Salvation Army. She was placed there by one of our case managers after she was engaged on our system one day. Note, this woman is not pictured in the photo to the right. Next slide, please. On this slide are two more stories that keep us inspired and motivated. That last quote from a man who was struggling with alcohol problems is a stark reminder of the many situations that a lot of homeless deal with on a daily basis. 48% of the people reported to our case managers disabling conditions such as mental health, alcohol, and substance abuse. Next slide. Our hard-working and passionate caseworkers, as you can see on the screen, are responsible for these success stories. From the left to the right, we have lead case manager Vincent Allen, Gloria Woodard, Tim Robinson, Dallery Turner, Janika Robinson, and Tiffany Gray. Next slide, please. Since 2020, when the program began, MARTA has spent $936,000 on the program. Because Hope Atlanta is a 501c3 and this is a letter of agreement, there is no DBE goal in place for this contract and none is required under MARTA policy. Hope Atlanta's leadership and staff are extremely diverse. For example, 39% of its board is female, 33% of its board members are African American, 11% are Hispanic, 11% are Asian. On the leadership team, 65% are female, 25% are African American, and 25% are Hispanic. Among the organization staff, 65% are female, 78% are African American, 3% are Hispanic, and 2% are Asian. To ensure MARTA continues this critical work, the staff is seeking a 2-year extension at a cost of $982,800 when the contract expires in August. If this modification is approved, that will bring the total contract value approximately to $1.92 million. This concludes the presentation. I will give it back to Madam Chair.
It would help if I turned on my mic, wouldn't it? Do I have a motion for approval? It's been moved by Ms. Williamson and second by Ms. Hardage. Do we have any questions or discussion at this time? Mr. Worthy?
I just want to say, great job. I think this is the most rewarding, one of the most rewarding programs I've seen since I've been on the board. I think this is fantastic. I wish we could do more, but I know we're doing as much as we can, and this is a no-brainer to me.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hardage?
I want to echo what Chairman Worthy just said, but I do have a question. It says that we have 10 shelter beds.
Correct.
So that just means that any time we can have 10 people that we select to be living in the beds that we pay for.
That's correct.
And how long average length of stay for these?
Well, it's my understanding that they do have an average length of stay where I believe it's within 60 days. However, I can maybe Lyle can assist me.
So,
60 to 90 days.
60 to 90 days, and during that time, they're transitioning them into more permanent housing of some type?
That's correct.
All right, thank you so much.
Yeah, and my comment's an extension of that, or my question rather. With the beds and the extension of the contract, have we discussed maybe extending the number of beds that we have? So we have 5 in one location for men, 5 in a second location for ladies, but was there any talk of maybe expanding the number of beds that we have?
Yes, we have explored that, but at this moment, we haven't asked for more beds at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Durrett, is your light on?
Yes, it is.
Go ahead.
Fantastic. Are the case managers employees of Hope, and is 100% of their work spent working on behalf of MARTA under this contract?
Yes, so all case managers are employees of Hope Atlanta, and they are working strictly on MARTA system or MARTA property wherever their services are needed. So they're on our system daily between the times of 6 a.m. to 10 p.m.
Terrific. Second, one of the jobs that I have is I run the Bucket Coalition, and homelessness is one of our focus areas. And I am hopeful that I can provide on our website, the Bucket Coalition website, good information to educate the community about homelessness, but also what is being done about it so that people understand it better. And so what I'm asking you, John, maybe you and Lyle, would it be possible for me to work with you to come up with a way of us educating the public about this program in a way that speaks from our voice but represents absolutely MARTA's as well, so that people can understand that?
Absolutely. So at your desk, we do have new updated material that we plan on promoting out to the public, as well as our internal and externally. So yes, we definitely can work with you to make that happen as well.
Okay, terrific. We're going to be doing the same thing with Catherine Vassell. So I'd love the idea of engaging and helping us to do that. So thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Blakely?
Thank you. Absolutely amazing program. You will always have my unwavering support on this. Going back to Board Member Williamson's questions about the bids. So how did we arrive at 10, and what prevents us from requesting more?
So I think I will defer to Ms. Allen, Chief Allen.
So we started, there's nothing that prevents us from increasing the number, right? With the exception of the availability of beds or space at the Gateway Center and at the Women's Center at the Salvation Army. So there's nothing in the MARTA contract that would prevent us from increasing that. It's just, is there space available? We started with 5 beds when we first, I think, year 2 of the contract, and that was really at the Gateway Center, and that's only, that location only shelters men. The more we engaged folks in our system, we started to encounter more women, and so we wanted to make space and ensure that we had space for women. And so the team searched and found that there was locations available at the Salvation Army. So we'll continue. You know, one of the things that Lyle and the team are looking for is more space for families, right? So we do engage families from time to time, not a lot. But we have encountered families, and so we're looking for just additional spaces. So it's really just a matter of, you know, what's available, what's in the region that's available, because we're not the only ones who are, you know, looking for these.
Understood. Thank you.
Just want to piggyback on that. So the progress that Ms. Allen just spoke about, when I saw the pre-brief of this presentation, it struck me to the point that I said to the group that's working on it, congratulations, because the last time I saw that infographic on page 4, you know, the categories were honorable, but the numbers were very low. And just through their tenacity and continued engagement, these numbers are starting to look like the results that we were hoping for. So I just want to add on to the congratulations to the team.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm glad to hear the comment regarding families, because I do know the Gateway Center also services families. They have locations literally for families there as well. And for clarification, this does transcend all jurisdictions. Is that correct?
Yes, so yeah, we're working with Hope Atlanta, has that name, but this team works in every jurisdiction within the MARTA system.
Just wanted that on the record.
Yes, ma'am.
One other question. Of the counselors, no names needed, but is one of the counselors previously a person that we supported in homelessness as well?
Not necessarily supported directly by MARTA, but the term that we like to use is that these folks have lived experiences. So yes, there is at least one person who has been in this position before and has a passion and a heart, and that's part of the reason that they are some of the greatest folks that we could have out there representing us and helping others.
I thought I remembered from a previous update that one of the person was engaged as the counselor. Are there any other questions? Hearing none, seeing none, let us vote. Thank you, Mr. Gorton. The resolution has passed.
Thank you.
At this time, we will have a briefing from Kevin Hackshaw, Manager, Business Development and Sales, regarding the City of Atlanta Employee Fair Pilot Partnership. Mr. Hackshaw.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Chair Scott and members of the External Relations Committee. My presentation today is about the City of Atlanta Employee Fair Pilot. Next slide, please. So in collaboration with MARTA, the City of Atlanta is conducting an employer-sponsored pilot for City of Atlanta employees. This pilot will provide unlimited transit on MARTA rail and bus within the MARTA service area, and the City of Atlanta will cover the full cost of the pilot. This 6-month program is going to run from August 1st, 2023, which is next Tuesday, to January 31st of 2024, and up to 1,000 total participants, that's city employees, full-time and part-time, will be able to join the program at no cost to the employees. As of this morning, we have 900 people signed up for the program, so we're almost at 1,000 folks, and we haven't even officially started yet. And participants will use Breeze Mobile 2.0 to access their free fare during the pilot. Next slide, please. The city will be responsible for outreach, selection of participants, and communication during the pilot period. And the pilot will, of course, operate as a first-come, first-serve until 1,000 participants have been enrolled. On the MARTA end, we will enroll and delete participants in the pilot. We'll also manage any tech support issues during the pilot period, including providing Breeze Mobile sign-up assistance on kickoff day, video static walkthroughs, and any other IT assistance that may be needed. Participants will be required also to take pre- and post-pilot surveys. Next slide, please. In terms of evaluation and next steps, MARTA's customer experience and research and analysis teams will work with the city to evaluate some of the following during the pilot. Some of these are transit patterns, including increases and decreases in use, how free access changes usage. Is transit used for more than just trips to work? For example, going to the park on the weekend or going to a Hawks game. And also, do participants' perception of the system change over the course of the pilot? And finally, the city will evaluate the pilot data, hopefully long before the pilot is over, and determine next steps before the pilot ends in 2024. Next slide, please. And that concludes my presentation. I'm open to any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hackshaw. Are there any questions? Mr. Durrett?
This is exciting. Have we attempted to do this sort of a program with any other local government or institution? I'm thinking Georgia Tech, Georgia State, other places where folks ought to be using MARTA. Or will we learn from this and then come up with an outreach program to approach others to consider doing the same thing?
That's a great question. So we are actually in discussions with other jurisdictions as well as private organizations and a couple of schools about doing what we call full enrollment, where they basically, the institution or the jurisdiction pays for all of it at a greatly reduced cost because they're signing everyone into the program. We're hoping that this MARTA, the program with the city, will kind of give us that impetus with other organizations when they see that this is going to be successful and we have more data on it, and we hope that this will kind of push this along with other organizations.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? Hearing none, I want to say thank you for the update. We actually have heard of programs across the country at APTA meetings where this same type of project is working quite well. And so I'm very excited to hear it here in Atlanta.
Awesome. So am I.
In Georgia. Thank you. Good afternoon, Ms. Fisher. At this time, we will have a briefing regarding media impressions for March through June of 2023 by Ms. Stephanie Fisher, Senior Director of Communications. Ms. Fisher.
Good afternoon, Chair Scott, Mr. Greenwood, Ms. Allen, and members of the External Relations Committee. Again, I'm Stephanie Fisher. I'm the Senior Director of Communications, and it's my pleasure to present an overview of our media impressions from March through June. Next slide, please. In March, MARTA was mentioned 4,600 times in the news, with the More MARTA Atlanta program, specifically the 5 Points Transformation Project, receiving the most news coverage. 95% of the news coverage was positive or neutral in tone, and it had a $4 million advertising value equivalent, or AVE. That says $11 million. Let's go with $11 million advertising value equivalent, or AVE. Next slide, please. We did see a spike in news coverage in April with 5,600 mentions, due in part to our participation in the popular Autism Transit Project, which garnered national news. 90% of the news coverage was positive or neutral in tone, with opposition to the Streetcar East Extension Project accounting for the 10% of negative news coverage. The large amount of news stories in the month resulted in a $17 million advertising value equivalent. Next slide. In May, it was Taylor Swift and Janet Jackson, Ms. Scott, who increased our news mentions to 6,000. News coverage of the large crowds using MARTA to get to and from the concerts over 3 nights resulted in $21 million in advertising value and almost 90% positive and neutral news coverage. Continued coverage of a fatal shooting that happened at East Point and a safety detour that we implemented on Bus Route 183 accounted for the 11% of negative news coverage in May. Next slide. June news coverage jumped back up to almost 100% positive or neutral in tone, thanks to our Summerhill Bus Rapid Transit groundbreaking celebration. 5,600 mentions during the month resulted in $17 million in advertising value. Next slide. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Do we have any questions for Ms. Fisher or comments? Ms. Fisher, there are no questions or comments.
Wonderful.
We're excited. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other matters to come before the External Relations Committee? Hearing none, we're adjourned.